I would just say that it can't be you until it is you, you know,
Yeah,
um, you know,
yeah.
and I in cyber, we as professionals, it's so complex, and there's so much going on, and there's so much crime, and there's so much underworld activity, and there's so many assets in play, that thinking, hey, we're safe. If that's your personality, that's great. I would keep that part of your personality that is confident that things are going to be wonderful, but it's not justified given what I see. We're all basically candidates for a scam, and it's only getting more sophisticated.
Hello and welcome to the Smarter Online Safety Show. I'm your host, Jocelyn King, the Queen of Online Safety. Hello and welcome to the Smarter Online Safety Show. I'm Jocelyn King, the Queen of Online Safety, and your host of Smarter Online Safety Show. And I am so happy and thrilled to be able to bring a wonderful person to you today who just is chock full of great information and stories and tips. And it is my pleasure to introduce Padraic O'Reilly. He is the Chief Innovation Officer and co-founder of CyberSaint, and he leads their innovation around how AI can help people and companies with risk management and cybersecurity. So he brings the chops on AI and a long career in cybersecurity. Welcome, Padraic, to our show.
Jocelyn, thank you. It's great to be here.
It is so great. And I see you've got, for now we have audio listeners and video listeners. And for those of you who can't see, Patrick recently had a slight dusting of 2 feet of snow behind him. So we were looking at a beautiful winter wonderland. So
That's right. Yeah, complete with winter effects behind me. That's
so
right.
it's fair to say you help people and companies dig out of anything, whether it's snow or cybersecurity. There you go.
That's right. Yeah, we don't want anyone buried under snow or buried under, extra burdens that come along with cyber that hasn't gone well for them.
Right. And you've seen so much, Patrick. I mean, you've seen, let's face it, you've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, and there's a lot
Mhm.
of all of that in there. So tell us a little bit about what trends you're seeing in the scams, especially with AI and cybercrime today.
Yeah,
There's new things popping up all the time, and you've got your
yeah,
finger on the pulse. What are we looking at?
certainly do. Yeah. Well, I think the biggest trends in AI and crime, and crime is everywhere. Crime's constant. I mean,
Hmm.
cyber crime, goes back all the way to the initial worms and morphed into nation state intrigue and Stuxnet and centrifuges. But at just the individual level, these devices we have right here,
Our
um,
phones and little
yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah. Endless amounts of creativity have been brought to bear probably over the last 2 years. And, you have to imagine these cyber criminals, you have to sort of picture them, in your head. And what I know about them is that they go to work like anyone else.
Hmm.
They go to the office. They punch in, you know, they clock out for lunch. And then they, go home and they commute and they work in collectives. And the nation state sponsored ones, it's their job to come up with endlessly creative ways to, defraud individuals and defraud organizations. So I see it both at the individual level and at the organizational level. And when you're defrauding organizations, you're dealing with individuals, right? So some of the things you see in large corporations, what they're endlessly preparing for, the good risk teams, the good cyber risk teams, are, scams that have morphed in the last year or two. There's new financial fraud that's terrifying, which is, it's not just the, hey, you get a text and you're being asked for a gift card, to get a gift card for your boss.
Right.
No, you might be sent a video link where your boss is directly saying something to you, or you might be in a Zoom meeting where your boss is being spoofed and asking you to transfer money. How does this relate to like individuals and their phones? endless creativity is being applied to vishing and phishing and spamming campaigns, and
Mhm.
you name it. The complexity of them goes from the super simple to the very complex, and can be almost like a theatrical production. So you will
That's
see,
a great analogy
yeah,
because cyber criminals have really caught up with Hollywood with everything.
yep,
And we used to talk about, CG coming into movies, and stuff, and of course all the animation now. But I think for people listening who can't
yeah,
quite believe
yeah,
that they like, I'm on this call with you
yeah.
and I'm seeing you because we're on a Zoom call.
That's
People
right,
can't quite believe that they could get on a Zoom call with somebody they've worked with
right,
ostensibly for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and
right.
be spoofed by them. They just think, oh, it wouldn't happen to me. Right. And that's the most vulnerable position to be in sometimes. So talk to the people who are thinking,
Yeah,
oh, that could
it couldn't be me.
I would I'd
Yeah,
recognize
I'll
my
never fall
boss or
for
my
that.
coworker or
Right,
my brother. What do
right.
you have to say to them?
I would just say that it can't be you until it is you, you know.
Very good.
You know,
Yeah.
and I in cyber, we as professionals, it's so complex, and there's so much going on, and there's so much crime, and there's so much underworld activity, and there's so many assets in play, that thinking, hey, we're safe. If that's your personality, that's great. I would keep that part of your personality that is confident that things are going to be wonderful, but it's not justified given what I see. We're all basically candidates for a scam, and it's only getting more sophisticated.
So
And
that old motto of hope for the best but prepare for the worst is really a good motto for
very
everybody
much,
to have in these cyber crime and cybersecurity AI times we live in.
very much so, and kind of if you are someone who likes to trust,
Hmm.
are a trusting individual, it's trust but verify.
Hmm.
Trust but verify. So, you have to have a little part of your mind in this era we're living in that asks, how real is this? And do I have to do this? And if I have to do it, how could I verify that what I'm about to do is safe?
Right. No,
Yeah.
that's great. Now you work regularly with CISOs, sorry, Chief
Yeah.
Information Security Officers for people listening. And I work with them as well. We work with the chief financial officers and CEOs
Mhm.
as well, because it's not them who are necessary, though they're not the ones who are necessarily going to be spoofed. It's the AI videos of them
Right.
going to the people who have the ability to do the wire transfers or cut the check or give access to something that are
Yeah.
going to be the targets. And for anybody listening who works with those people or is one of those people, what do you have to say? We'll talk about it in the business context, and then we'll switch over to the personal and your
Sure.
family. So
Sure.
just because there are these, there's these stories, and you and I were talking about like the Hong Kong one and things like that. Give people an idea of, if you think it's not coming for you, what's the caliber of people who have been
Oh,
spoofed by
God.
this?
Yeah. Well, I know a guy, I won't name him, but he's got about 100 patents. And, he's as smart a fella as you want to meet.
Mhm.
And he fell prey to one of the wire fraud scams 6 years ago. He got some of the money back. It was being laundered through North Korea and China. But he's one of the smartest guys I know. He's also,
He's in that
relentlessly,
top IQ list somewhere.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
he fell for it.
Right.
And it was just back then you would see these scams where the emails would come in, and they were basically a kind of phishing. They were spoofed emails, so they would come in from the boss, but everything would be, they had obviously intercepted some traffic, so the criminals had looked at what emails look like from wire institutions, from banks, and they had
So they
looked.
had a clear example to replicate
That's right.
that
And
that
they
would
rep
look legitimate to the people already involved there.
It
Hmm.
did, and it did. There were, in retrospect, there were a couple of little things that were off, right?
Hmm.
But some of the domain stuff, which is why we hear so much about, look at the domain when it
Right.
comes to, emails and phishing. I would say to CISOs, they already know it.
Right.
They get paid to be sort of hyper vigilant and a little bit paranoid.
Well, those of
Um,
us in that for those listening, those of us who work in cybersecurity, we're called paid paranoids for a reason.
Right, right. And I mean, we probably stumbled into cybersecurity because we already had some of that, a little bit of that ourselves.
Mhm.
Almost everyone I know in cyber has a tendency to kind of worry about, a lot of different elements of a thing and isn't always the most trusting with respect to the things they see, which is a good,
Mhm.
it's not maybe
Always
personally.
scanning for what could possibly go wrong here.
Right. And
Uh-huh.
always scanning anyway,
Yes.
because that's we're scanning our devices, we're scanning our neighborhood, we're scanning for threats endlessly. That's why you see so many people come out of intelligence in the military into our field,
Right.
because they habitually are trained to monitor their
Right.
environment
80,
for.
80% are from military, law enforcement, Secret Service, something like that. The military, in fact, military started it. Military built what we now call the dark web for
Right.
intelligence purposes. It's now being used as a haven,
Yeah.
and platform is like Craigslist for cyber
Yes.
criminals. But
Yes.
and so they're on it all the time to monitor all of that. But yeah, all of it came out of military
It
intelligence.
did.
So
It
it's
did.
a number one feeder for
It's
cybersecurity people.
yeah, and it's a dark transformation of, a set of utilities and tools and
Mhm.
technologies that were meant to, increase connectedness, connectivity. You could argue that our push to wire ourselves together better is what's created the opportunity
Mhm.
for for malevolent actors to take advantage of that. And that's, it's true, you can't have
Right.
one without the other in a sense. So
Right.
I think CISOs have the basic approach down right. They sometimes aren't always able to impress upon the chief financial officer, because we see a lot of that in my company because we're a software, and CISOs are always struggling to get budget, right? And
Right. So for
it,
everybody listening, every company you're doing business with that's large has a CISO, which is the chief security officer, whose
yeah,
job it is to protect that. And their biggest job is trying to influence and communicate well what the real situation on the ground is, what the real threats are to the executive team making decisions that ultimately affect all of us as consumers. That's has to do with whether our information is getting breached at those companies. Because when was the last letter you got? Was it last week
oh
or
yeah,
last year? But you're
yeah.
getting another one soon, I'm sure. So
Yeah, you are. And you raise a really interesting point there. And that is, cybersecurity is a part of the company's products, services we buy, and it's a part of it should be a part of the valuation of those companies. So in other words, if a company has a poor track record of cybersecurity, that should impact their price in the market. The mechanism isn't always perfect. So you
Mhm.
see large corporations kind of sometimes getting away with too much.
Right.
They can always absorb a lot of risk. They have insurance, they have a lot of things that protect them. But medium-sized, smaller firms, it's an existential threat. And an individual, it's even more of an existential threat.
Right.
So
Well, and I think, what you and I see too. I mean, it's ultimately it's never just the technology that's the problem. When everybody listening gets those letters from whoever's been breached and
hmm
saying their information, whether it's their medical information
hmm
or their financial information or their credit report, whatever, the question everybody has is, how is this possible? Aren't they taking care of this? And I think what
Right.
what what has to be conveyed is it's 95% of these things have a human element in it, right? Meaning,
Oh yeah.
so can you explain the human element to people? Like, because they're going, aren't
Yeah.
they spending
I
millions of dollars on technology? How is this possible?
yeah.
Help people connect the dots to the human element that is what trips up and overrides the technology.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty simple. A lot of these breaches we see might start with someone on the help desk, and credentials might, be the goal, right, for the criminal. They might call up, they might have done some espionage already. They might know about a critical application that's in use, by people inside the company.
Hmm.
And they might call up and pretend to be someone from the company and say, "Oh, my login isn't working.
Hmm.
This is my boss is breathing down my throat." That's a bit of a confidence game to some of that. Sometimes it's as simple as nobody put two-factor authentication on a remote access, program. That's what we saw in the Colonial Pipeline attack. It was that
So
simple.
explain Colonial Pipeline to people because that's still confusing the heck out of everybody, and
Sure.
especially for Americans who are going, "Why is our grid at risk?
Yeah.
I don't understand. Why can't they
I
just
can
fix
I
it?"
can explain why the grid's at
Explain
risk too.
Colonial Pipeline. Yes, exactly. So let's
Um,
break this down into everyday
sure,
talking
sure,
points.
sure. So, generally speaking, the pipeline and the oil and gas and petroleum concerns in our country and
Hmm.
elsewhere have not been as tightly regulated as energy. So like energy, because it was once, sort of publicly held and it deregulated and went into the possession of private concerns, it inherited some of the governmental oversight that had to be put in place because it was publicly owned and held, right? So it had to be accountable through the government, and but petroleum, not so much. They do have a thing called the American Petroleum Institute, the API. So that's a lobby basically that goes to Washington and does a lot of different things. But one of the things they do is they publish cybersecurity standards for the industry. So they look at, best practices, and they look at NIST, and they look at cybersecurity framework and the various other things, and they fashion sort of highly specific, tailored versions of cyber regulations for the kind of infrastructure that you see in oil and gas. So refineries, transportation, drilling, and then, with Colonial Pipeline, that's a discrete kind of subsection of petroleum and gas, and that's moving it, right? And
Hmm.
turns out there wasn't a heck of a lot in place for oil and gas. Now, there's two
Of
things.
what? Of actual technology or
There's a lot of
practices
technology,
or
a
yeah.
lot of
Okay.
technology.
That's
There's
what people are wondering. Yes.
not a lot of rules about how you use that technology or update that technology, or when you have to update it.
It's kind of like, so if we're painting the picture for everybody for Colonial Pipeline example,
Hmm.
being like a house that has a very expensive modern security system installed on part of
Yes.
it
Yes.
and an old system on the rest of it, and they're supposed to be connected. And then the procedures you're talking about are kind of like people haven't lived in the house in 5 years, still have an access code and can get in.
Right.
It's kind of like having this very sophisticated, expensive technology at your fingertips. And what you're
Yes.
what you're saying about the procedures is that, and the practices is that how it's being implemented, how it's being
Hmm.
updated, and who has access or not
Hmm.
is not at the level it needs to be to protect it.
That's right.
And that's why you can spend tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars on cybersecurity technologies and deployments and still have this gaping hole. I keep picturing those houses that you see when you're driving through the countryside that have a very, strong, secure
Yeah.
gate on the driveway. And it's like, wow,
Yeah.
nobody's getting through that, but the fence has fallen down around.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Which, if you're a paranoid type of person, you
Hmm.
would see instantly.
Okay.
But
Well, Colonial Pipeline basically has this strong, secure. It had the strong, secure gate. It
they
had
had
some
just
guard.
done
It
a
even had
hundred. They had
guards.
just done $100 or so million transformation project. In
Right.
fact, so it's
Right.
interesting you say that because it's true. They had
But
just
somewhere
done.
they had a big section of fence missing, and that's what the bad guys got through.
They didn't have two-factor authentication on a remote access protocol, and they also had not
So what does that
basically.
mean? At somewhere outside of the main
So,
system?
so yeah. So not everyone shows up to work, to get into the control center in person. Some
Hmm.
dial in remotely, so they
Hmm.
can access some of the systems remotely.
Hmm.
Now, that's normal. I mean, there's lots
Hmm.
of, really well-known remote access softwares that are pretty secure.
Hmm.
But they have extra protocols in place to make them even more secure.
Hmm.
So if somebody manages to get credentials and can dial in, so it's just an email login and a password, and they can get into the system. The
Hmm.
system should have the ability to throw two-factor authentication onto it,
Hmm.
and it did in this case, but nobody had switched that on. So,
So again, back to that analogy, it's like having this very sophisticated system,
mhm,
armed guards, everything high tech. But I get a hold of somebody's badge and
right,
I go through and I'm not verified that I'm really that person.
right.
They let me right on through the $100 million security system and I
That's
can
right.
do whatever I want once I get inside.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Which
Yeah.
is why I think sometimes when you talk to non-cyber professionals, you talk about something like two-factor authentication. They know about that,
Hmm.
but they don't maybe understand the principle of it. And the principle is like, something you have, something
Hmm.
and then with biometrics, something you are, right?
Hmm.
So if you had the badge and the actual name and you kind of looked like that person, if
Hmm.
there were another step that were biometric, whether it
Right.
be a fingerprint or,
Iris identification,
iris
if
scanning
it's
like you do
really,
at the
yeah,
airport,
yeah, yeah.
whatever, that would be in essence two-factor authentication on that, right?
Right, right.
So, yeah, they had to shut down everything because they also had not really planned for a breach of the
Hmm.
IT system. And they have not been terribly clear, as most companies won't,
Right.
about whether or not the hop could have been made into the operational technology.
Well, so the bad news for everybody listening is that we have incredible vulnerabilities in every corporation and every
Yes.
system, no matter how much money we throw at it and how many people, because you're only as strong as your weakest link.
Yeah.
Never applies to anything as much as to cybersecurity, right? So we've got that. The good news is that it's the complexity of all of this and the
Hmm.
amount of software and the amount of people that need access that makes it hard. So the good news is that for the average person just trying to protect themselves, their family, their home, they don't have all that level of complexity. So it's a
Right.
lot easier to protect yourself personally than
Yes.
it is to protect a corporation or a pipeline or anything like that. So let's get back. We promised we'd talk about some AI
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
impersonation
Okay.
and cybercrime for families.
Sure.
Let's
Yeah.
bring it back to that. What do people need to know that you're seeing now on the personal side?
Yeah.
And there's bad news, but then there's good news of what they can do to be ready for it happening, so they don't have to
Yeah.
they won't become a victim.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think everyone knows that they're getting more spam texts than they used to, right?
Mhm.
So you will sometimes see a lot of different strategies with spam texts. Sometimes it'll just be like, "Hey, I told you I'd meet you downtown next week," right? And that's usually just sort of almost a foot in the door, right?
Mhm.
That could actually be a bot doing that, so people maybe don't know that, you can spin up a bot, you can give it a list of phone numbers, and
Yeah.
it will go out and at scale try to defraud people or get
You know
them to
that
the, yeah,
that's such a great point because a lot of people think, "Oh, I'm not important enough. I don't have enough money." What they don't realize is
it's a numbers
a
game.
hacker is just taking 5 minutes to program an entire thing and then unleashing it on a
It's a
hundred
numbers
thousand
game. Yeah,
numbers.
yeah.
And while they're out gaming or sleeping or eating pizza or whatever, that communication
It's
is
working
happening
for
to
them,
you.
that bot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nobody's
Exactly.
having to do an extra lift to get to you. It's not a human taking time out of their precious time schedule to
That's
get
right.
you. And I think people really need to understand that, right? A bot is
Yes,
just coming at you. You're one in 100,000 or a million or 10 million or 100 million people
that's
getting
right.
this.
This is industrialized fraud, is what it is.
Mm.
And that's what I sometimes when I'm talking to just family and friends, that's what I have a hard time. And they
Oh,
talk to me
that's
about,
you bring up an important point. It's an
yeah,
industrialized fraud at scale,
at scale. That's right.
automated. And now
And
with AI,
it's only going to get worse and more credible and more convincing. And it preys upon our human nature, so a lot of these messages you'll get through phishing or vishing will try to instill immediately, try to make the impression upon you that there's some urgency to this,
mhm.
you know,
Well,
because,
back to your point of the brilliant person with the 100 patents.
yeah,
Anybody, no matter how smart they are, they can be top 2% intelligence IQ levels in the Mensa Mensa recognized of the top 2%. And everybody, if we get put into our panic middle
Yep.
brain of fight or flight,
Yep.
we're not using that beautiful computer in our frontal lobe that helps us
Yeah.
discern and helps us think, well, wait a minute. If we're in that panic or urgency, right?
Right.
And cybersecurity, I always like to say hackers are better at psychology than most psychologists and marketers. They have it wired. They have us wired, correct?
They do, and it's diabolical, because
Really
yes,
is.
they are, and you have to understand about hackers. They're not, there's a popular notion that hackers are just these slovenly people on couches that are like,
That
or they're sitting in front of endless amounts of code.
it's
No,
a guy in a hoodie in his mother's basement with
yeah,
Twinkies and
yeah.
Red Bull cans
Yeah,
around.
and he's just a loser, but he's nothing better to do. He's like just trying to get $50 so he can go down to the dispensary or something,
Right.
And
We
but
can thank
no,
Hollywood for this picture, by the way.
I know, but that's not the case. These are professionals.
Yeah.
These people are professionals and they make a lot, some of them make a lot of money
Yeah.
and they treat it as a profession.
Hmm.
They're clinical about it. They don't, it's not right or wrong to them. It's just about how much, revenue they can generate.
A lot of people don't know this, and apologies to our listeners for some more bad news, but
Yeah.
there just like there's software as a service that everybody can buy, which we call SaaS. There's ransomware as a service.
Yep.
There's
Malware's a service.
malware as a service, and you're literally subscribing to this the way you subscribe to Netflix, but it's costless.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is kind of nightmarish. And I can understand when I'm talking to people, who aren't in our field, that they're kind of like, I don't want to hear it. But it's good to know who you're up against.
Right. Right.
It just is. It's not a bad thing to know who you're up against. And some of the cultural templates we work with, like, it's some slovenly dude in a basement.
Right.
It's not that guy.
Hmm.
It's not. It's
Right.
it might be North Korea, but it's professionals in North Korea
Right.
who are working with the tacit approval of the North Korean government to
Right.
rob you blind.
And I think it was last year, Japan
Yep.
took down a ring that had a lot of grandmothers in it
Yeah.
that
I
were
mean, it's
calling
a job.
people
It's a job. It's a
customer service.
job.
So you're not just getting, you could not, maybe you're not getting hacked by a hacker in a hoodie. You could be literally
Could be a
getting
grandma.
scammed by somebody's grandmother. So there you
That's
go.
right. That's right.
So
It's modern
right,
confidence games is
it
what it
is.
is.
Yes.
It's just confidence games that use technology.
So for people who don't want to live paranoid all the time, because
Hmm.
it's no like, look, you and I learned cybersecurity. I've shared my story on this show that I did not learn it willingly. I learned it by being
No, you
attacked.
did not. Yeah.
But, and then it became my profession, and I'm very
Right.
grateful for that. But no, the reason we call our show and our company Smarter Online Safety is because nobody wants to learn cybersecurity unless they're going into the profession. So for people who just want to stay safe, let's give them some good
Yeah.
news now, right? You've got
Yeah.
these AI videos of like if you're, an older adult,
Right.
you're going to be getting a video, a
Yeah.
FaceTime video or whatever
Yeah.
video of your teenage kid or your college age
Right.
kid on spring break. Guess what? They're going to time it to spring
Hey.
break schedule.
Yeah. I
And
need to
they're
be
in,
bailed out.
yeah,
I'm in a jail down in
right,
Blue Nevis or something.
right. So they should just or you're going to get something from your elderly parent. Or if you
Right.
are the elderly parent, senior, you're going to get it from your,
Yes.
like your parents, Patrick, could get it because you're traveling and
Right.
you got mugged and they stole your phone and wallet. That's why you're not even calling on your number and you got to
That's
have
right.
some emergency money. Could they just wire you whatever it is?
Yep.
All of that. It is coming for everybody, correct?
It is. Yeah, it is. That scam in and of itself is probably the one of the more compelling and powerful ones because it preys upon your desire to make sure that everyone in your life is okay and safe, and that's where it hits you. It hits you
So for
right
the
there.
Yeah, so for the people who are smart and want to be smarter and about their online safety, what should they be doing in the next 24 hours or this week to prepare themselves and protect themselves from the inevitable AI video coming soon to a phone or device near them?
Well, they
What
could,
what can they be
yeah,
doing?
they could make sure they could reach out to their network and do something super simple, which is,
Mhm.
another factor of authentication. It's kind of like spy stuff. You could just
Mhm.
have a word among
Mhm.
your family and friends that you use if indeed there is some kind of emergency,
Right.
right? If any of us are traveling and there is an emergency,
So if
and
you called me and said I
yeah,
need you to wire $5,000 because I got
what's
mugged
the
in the,
word? What's
you're
the
going to
word?
ask me, and if I don't know it,
You're
it
not that person.
then I game over, fraud
Yeah,
over, and I
right.
move, and then you're moving on to, you know, uh, you're moving on to the next victim who's not prepared.
Yeah, because it's too much work at that
Yeah.
point, and that's really it. You just want to, and that it goes to an even simpler principle, which is
Hmm.
if you get a link
Hmm.
from the government or the IRS or something that says, well, is something in your account is out of order, act like that person who lets bills pile up on their table. You don't have to do that. You don't have to act. If indeed a legitimate governmental authority has something they want to negotiate with you, they'll
Hmm.
find a way to get in touch with you that is, verifiable. They're
Hmm.
not going to do transact via text.
Right.
That's just not going to
The
happen.
IRS does not text you. They just
No,
don't. And the
they just don't.
DMV does not text you, even though probably everybody listening has gotten texts from supposedly the IRS and the
And the
DMV.
DMV. Yes. Yeah. But,
Right.
just ignore those.
Right.
Block them, erase them.
Hmm.
Don't click stuff.
And if you're wondering if it's real, you can just hang up and then call, look up
Sometimes
the
you can
right
Google it.
number.
Sometimes you can Google it and you can learn all about the scam.
That's
So
perfect. And that's a good point because a lot of people don't know what to put in. So just tell them what's the search term you put in. Is
you
DMV
can
phone
take
text a
you
scam?
can say DMV scam, or you
Mhm.
can take some of the text in the text and say, is this text part of a current scam? And the Google result along with Gemini will tell you flat out every aspect of that scam and where it's going around and how long
Right.
it's been in existence. You can get
Mhm.
all sorts of intelligence on these scams if you just take some of the words they're using, some of the fake bogus links, some of the keywords they have. You just
Right.
just do a little bit of research and you can learn all about these scams.
Which is so important because not only do you then know, and then it tells you, what to do. First of all, it says do not engage with them, but it'll combat part of your fight or flight response that's
It will.
panicking about what if the IRS really is going to
Right.
do
Right.
whatever they're saying they're going to do to me.
Right.
You can calm that part of your brain so
Yeah.
then your good thinking frontal lobe can come back online and
All
help
of a
you
sudden,
think
yeah.
about what steps to
You've
take.
returned to your senses in a sense.
I love that. Yes, yes, exactly. That is great advice. So really expect these AI videos. I mean, one of the things that people often ask me, well, isn't that expensive? So you want to tell our viewers how much does it cost them to create an AI tool now?
I mean, you can put millions of, bits of information into a large prompt and it costs cents.
Yes.
Getting an AI produced video now
Hmm.
in a hacked version of Sora or any of these other utilities
Right.
is pennies on the dollar. I mean, it would
Right.
it if 5 minutes for, five if they were to even pay $5 for some of
Mhm.
these, it would be well worth it if it were high quality.
Right. I've
Uh,
been testing out all of them and a lot of them, and then the pro ones as well,
yeah.
which are used for good, not just evil.
Yeah, oh, there's a lot
Like
of good uses, a lot of good
anything human
uses.
made can be used
Yeah,
to help
that's
humans
right.
or hurt humans.
Yeah.
But the thing is, what's really amazing, I'm very impressed by the technology behind. You don't even need video of me. Now, the one thing is the ones that were created with video are
Mhm.
identical. They can be created by taking this snippet of our
Our
conversation right
show could
now.
be, yes, that's
My
right.
hand gestures, my mouth, my eyebrow raising,
Yeah.
and the inflection in my voice,
Yeah.
all of that it will be perfect. And then that's
Yes.
why, and by the way, viewers, that's why I say, oh, do not ever wire. I'm never going to reach out on text and ask you to send me money. Okay. So what you have to, I only engage with people through smarteronlinesafety.com or through my known
Right.
channels.
Right.
But you can create this. What I was very impressed by is the ones
Hmm.
that are free, and
Yes.
everybody needs to hear this. The free ones, they just had a picture of me and
Yeah.
5 seconds of audio.
Yeah.
Now, my chin movement wasn't quite me. If you knew me well, you'd go, that doesn't,
Right.
there's something's off.
Quite work. Yeah.
But the ones where they have 5 minutes of video
Yeah.
are not off.
Yeah. No, they're
And
not.
and 2 years ago, and even 3 years ago, we were seeing a latency. We were seeing,
Latencies, hands were, up until last year, hands were an issue. So if there was any hand movement,
mhm,
fingers would appear and disappear. You'd see
right.
six
Oh, you'd have
fingers
three. There
sometimes.
was a famous one that somebody had three hands.
Yeah. Three. Yeah. Yeah. The
But that's
AI struggled
gone.
with hands. Yeah.
That's gone. They've
Yeah. That's
they've
gone now. Yeah.
mhm.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
Okay.
That's gone. Yeah.
So when you say trust but verify, it's
Yeah.
probably worth people thinking that, hey, if I get 5 or 10 video calls, I should assume that one of them, at least one of them,
Yeah.
is fake, right? If you assume, like, if you're kind of, if you, for people who want to be, who are trustworthy and
Hmm.
don't want to live like they're a survivalist
Yeah.
military
Yeah.
be in
Right.
you know behind enemy lines because who
Right.
nobody wants to live that way.
No.
Just having that question mark of I'm expecting that a certain
It's
it
due diligence. It's
due
just a
diligence.
little extra due diligence.
Yeah,
It
and so
really
I
is.
got to expect that some call or some text or some email that I get is
Hmm.
going to be a scam.
Hmm.
If you keep that question mark, then it's easier for you to spot it because your brain's not having to overcome the
That's right.
possibility, correct?
That's right. That's right. And it's not sort of I have to become a paranoiac, it's more I just have to stop myself when I get these modern forms of communication and ask, is it always trustworthy? And
Mm,
there are cases in which it isn't. And I mean, you can even look at your life and say, okay, I have my trusted circle that I talk to. I have, then I might, anything that kind of expands the network, right? So your
hmm.
social media can be an opportunity for scams because
Right.
it's expanding your network. And
Hmm.
people will sometimes show up on social media who are trying to be overly familiar too quickly.
Hmm.
It's just like if someone were overly too familiar too quickly if you were walking down the street,
Or
like,
standing in line
hey,
at a coffee shop,
yeah.
Starbucks or something. You're like, it does,
And we
there's
and
a,
we in person we're pretty good
hmm,
at being like, there was something shady about that.
hmm, hmm.
But it's the same online. It's
Right,
just that extra layer of self-protection that, we just have to get habituated,
right.
to. And you don't have to do anything in an emergency way.
Hmm.
You can always just sort of verify it.
Right,
So one of the main trainings that they offer now in corporations for help desk scams and phishing scams and phishing scams is always verify it.
hmm,
Always call, even if it seems like the boss is impatient. Always verify it. Don't
right,
ever just push the button.
right. Yeah, no, and back to those, like we were even talking about, like the CEO was asking you to buy gift cards. I mean,
Gift cards, yeah.
half the population's heard about that scam and knows that. So if
Mhm.
they got it, they go, wait a minute, I heard about this.
Right,
But it is true. And of course, who do they target? The new employees,
right,
people 2 steps below them, not people who would comfortably challenge them or
right.
delay this urgent request. But the people who have been successful are the ones who have said, who have either said out loud, I'm gonna verify this. You switch
Hmm.
to another channel,
Hmm.
and if this is coming to you from email or from a text, go to another channel, right? And
Just
verify
another
that you're real.
channel.
Just double check it with somebody because you and I have both seen this, and I think that statistics are roughly correct here, but it's 95 to 98% of people who have been scammed
Hmm.
had that moment where they went, something doesn't feel
Oh
quite
yeah,
right, but
yeah.
they didn't let that part rule. And what one of the biggest protections that everybody listening can have is just if you say, I'm going to expect that I'm sometime in the next month or year, or quarter, I'm going to get a scam,
Hmm.
and so I'm going to be prepared, and to then end the conversation there and go to a known good channel, right? And if you did nothing else but that, you would
Right.
be, you know, 20 times safer than you are right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's awesome. Great. So do that. You talked about multi-factor authentication. So first
Hmm.
of all, be prepared and expect one so that you're not taken unawares. And
Yeah.
then make sure you have your multi-factor, two-factor authentication turned on, right? On everything you can, pretty much, right?
Pretty much anything that offers it, have it. Yeah. I mean, as banking apps, you're going to want to use it on that. And just another note on that, the criminals know that you might have 2FA switched on your banking app. So sometimes they'll try to spoof the interfaces you're using to get you to enter your credentials, and sometimes they'll call you and claim to be, helping, get you
Right.
re-authenticated or
I'm your
something.
bank or I'm American
I'm your
Express or
bank, or
whatever.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
we're doing an annual maintenance, whatever it is. And they'll even try to steal your two-factor
Mhm.
authentication.
Right.
So they,
So while they're
yeah,
talking to you saying, could you please, we're going to send you a code
right,
to log you in. What they're
right.
actually doing is logging into your account
That's right.
and you're getting your account PIN sent to you. And then if you tell them that over the phone, that's why a lot of these banks and stuff will say, we will never ask you for this or we will never ask you for that. So,
Yes, and,
you,
and now the banks are getting better at it. I mean, whenever I get a code that's generated on their side,
mhm,
they will say, if anyone ever asks you for this code, stop, it's a scam.
right, right.
Which is helpful. That
Yeah.
last year they weren't doing that.
Right. It's true. And for those people who use Zelle to make payments, there's
Mhm.
more and more boxes you now have to check to say, I understand this is a scam. I understand I have to know this person. I understand I can't retrieve these funds. I mean, it started with very, like I think there was one simple warning, then it became
Right,
a click the box to verify that you have read this. And now
right.
it's become, I think it's at three boxes right now telling you, that you're saying, I understand I'm sending this money. I understand I'm responsible for knowing that I'm sending it to somebody legitimate. And I
Hmm.
understand that I can't get the money back because that's how they're having to educate people. And
Right.
also, they cannot get the money back. And so people will send money to a
No.
bad person and expect that, oh, well, my bank's going to get it back for me. And that's another misconception is thinking
Well, on some of
your
these, that's
money is
right. On
refundable.
some financial scams, it's very hard for the financial institutions to get enough insurance to cover their
Mhm.
losses. That money, sometimes law enforcement can get it back, but if it's gone halfway across the world,
Right.
um,
There may not be
it's
any jurisdiction for getting
that's
it
right.
back. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right.
If it's gone, it's gone.
That's it.
Right.
That's
That's
it.
great. Okay. So we've got some great tips here. So that's another thing too, is just to really be aware of, you know, who you're making payments to and be very cautious about that. So don't think that just because somebody's saying they're your bank or something, don't give your code over the phone. Is it fair to say you can't? Now, there are times when you initiate a call and they're going to
Yeah.
send you a code. If you've initiated the call to a known good number, like the number on the back of your credit card,
Yeah.
then you can expect that they
That's
actually are
generally, yeah, but
verifying you.
but generally those kinds of customer service oriented,
Mhm.
legitimate customer service oriented things will not end in, okay, now tell me a code you're getting. You know,
No, I have had some. I was on, and they said we're going to send you a code. You've got. They said you've got two-factor authentication turned on to you, so we're going to send you a text and we're going to send you an email, and you please read me the code, and they have to put it in.
yeah. Well, I mean, there
And
might be
so
some,
that
if you've
does happen.
initiated it, I would say if you've initiated it, there's a little more trust in that. Yeah.
Right, right. So just be aware. Just like what people, I think the ultimate takeaway here
Yeah.
is that everybody needs to start doing online what they're already doing in life. You can
In
walk
life.
out your front door and go down to your mailbox or whatever and get it come back and not be looking over your shoulder all the time. But you wouldn't walk down a dark alley at night
Right.
in a strange town without doing that.
Right.
And I think the more people can start seeing that there are dark alleys online, just like there are strolls to your mailbox online,
Yes.
and start seeing that because we weren't raised. We were taught not to run across the street without looking both ways and not to walk down a dark alley.
Yeah.
What we're doing here and what you're helping people understand is what's the online digital equivalent.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, the technology has been transformative, but
Mhm,
in some ways, it creates a whole host of vulnerabilities. Like you mentioned, vulnerabilities. We call vulnerabilities in cyber, vulnerabilities are just flaws in the software's execution, just little openings
mhm,
where someone can inject some code or
mhm,
do something sort of sideways, to take either credentials or to get control of that application. We know about vulnerability. That's what we deal with in cyber. It's a part of doing business.
Right.
But like you say, it also extends to real life. We have rules when we cross the street. We have rules when we're in public, how we conduct ourselves. We don't necessarily tell our life story to everyone who comes up to us. Some do.
Especially if they come up and ask us to tell us all these
Right,
facts about ourselves,
right,
we'd be
right.
suspicious.
If
Mhm.
people are acting overly interested in you, maybe they want something.
Right.
So there's an element of that as well in the technology, and I think people are getting better at it,
Mhm.
understanding that for
Right.
sure. But there's
Well, especially the people listening to this show and
well,
things like
hopefully
this,
your
and people
listeners
like
are
you.
certainly going to be better prepared. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you just have to keep up. And Jocelyn's show is a way to kind of keep up on some of the new ways they're trying to come after you.
Yeah, they really are. That is so great. Well, this has been so chock full. You've given us so many great tips. Tell people a little bit about your work at CyberSaint and who you work with and how people could contact you who would be interested in learning more.
Sure. Yeah. So at CyberSaint, we built a software that takes cybersecurity practices. We call them controls or regulations or policies, and we take those in and put them in our software. And then we work with companies to kind of measure and monitor how they're conducting their cybersecurity. And it gets pretty complex because we also deal with insurance and actuarial data, so the possible financial losses that companies can face, and then connect up the practices to that and sort of calculate, their shifting risk financially. And then we also attach sort of, we talk to a lot of cyber technology, so we take in a lot of cyber data, put that
Mhm.
on the controls, use that to help companies understand where they are. So
So
we
the way we
work
were
with
talking about the bad guys only need one way in, what you're helping them understand is find out what's their weakest links so you can
where do
protect
they,
those companies.
that's right. And to understand what the exposure might be financially, right? So if
That's
you're
right.
not doing X, Y, and Z, that could cost you $5 million this year.
Right. Right.
And
And
if
and
you
your customers' data could get exposed. Let's
That's
chuck
right.
it.
That's right.
So
And the
that's great.
reputational harm that can come from that,
Right.
and the lawsuits. So
Right.
we calculate all that. We
Okay.
calculate what it looks like if you have a breach. We calculate, cost per record, things like that.
So they could
Um,
go to CyberSaint website, which is
cybersaint.com. We're
great.
right there.
Mhm.
And they can see our basic offering. And if they want to get in touch, there's plenty of ways on the website to get in touch. And
Perfect.
yeah,
And they
yeah.
can follow you as well. It's
They can
that's a
follow me, yeah,
terrific.
and you can look me up on LinkedIn as well. There aren't a lot of Padraic O'Reillys on LinkedIn, so
And that's because it's PAD as in
yeah,
dog,
yeah, that's the Gaelic,
RAIC.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
Patrick. So you look
yep.
up Patrick O'Reilly and you can follow him and learn how to protect your business and everything. And so this is
Yeah.
so great. Thank you so much, Patrick, for joining us.
Thank you, Jocelyn.
This has
Real
been a great
pleasure.
show.
Yeah, we always enjoy talking about these things. It's
Yeah.
important. So
All right, everybody. So you heard some great stories of real things going on, everything, and you understand Colonial Pipeline
a little bit
issues
better,
better
maybe.
now
Yeah.
because that still comes up at dinner
Oh
conversations.
yeah. Oh, it'll still come up. Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
learn some great tips for how you can protect yourself and everything and everyone that matters. So thank you for joining us today. And until next time, stay safe out there.